So there's been some chatter about America's retrenchment on the world stage and what that means for our alliances these days.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting to see how these discussions, especially from figures like Lawrence Wilkerson, point to a potential shift in American security commitments.
Absolutely. It's the idea that America might be pulling back from its traditional role, and that really shakes up things globally, especially with alliances that have been our backbone for decades.
And what really grabbed my attention was that leaked documents, which are being said to be genuine, right? They suggest a deliberate retrenchment strategy that could have ripple effects.
Exactly. And when you think about it, if those documents are legit, they point to a scenario where America might frankly be stepping back from its commitments. And that means our allies in the Gulf and even in Europe are pretty much on their own now.
Right. That's a bold move. It almost sounds like the trust factor is eroding. But wasn't there an incident mentioned, something about Israel's actions in Qatar?
Yeah, that's spot on. Israel's attack on Qatar was used as an indicator that America might not be in a position to or isn't planning to safeguard its Gulf allies anymore.
Now that raises a big eyebrow. I mean, historically, hadn't the US been the guarantor in that theater?
It sure had been, and that's why this retrenchment is so concerning. It's like imagine going from being the big brother to almost letting younger siblings fend for themselves.
Yeah, right? And that sets the stage for a lot of strategic ambiguity. How does that even affect the balance of power in the Middle East?
Well, if America is indeed pulling back, we could see adversaries or rival powers stepping in. For example, there's a hint that even Europe might be gearing up to craft its own security arrangements independently.
That's an interesting contrast. On one hand, you have long standing bonds being stretched, and on the other, the notion that Europeans might be set free to, say, manage their own defense systems. It's a risky transition phase, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, it's a bit like suddenly changing the rules of a game mid play. The alliances that once relied on American military backing might be forced to scramble for new strategies and partners.
Right, exactly. And what's your take on the implication for global stability? Aren't we looking at a potential domino effect?
It's like a row of falling dominoes where one significant retracting move might trigger a whole avalanche of shifts. Retrenchment, in theory, might reduce the US burden, but it also leaves a vacuum that could be filled by less predictable actors or by disillusioned allies who feel abandoned.
I get that, but don't you think there might be some logic to letting regional players handle their own security? After all, it might lead to more locally tailored solutions.
That's a fair point. It might empower regional actors to become more self reliant. However, the issue is that not all regional players have the capacity or sometimes the will to secure peace, which could lead to unintended escalations.
Sure, I see what you're saying. So, in a way, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Greater autonomy for some, but maybe a greater risk of instability regionally if the players aren't up to the task.
Exactly. It's like handing the reins to someone who might either forge a new path or take a detour into risky territory. And with security, you're never too careful.
And going back to the leaked documents, do you think this is a case of internal consensus on policy or more of an emerging schism in US foreign policy?
That's a great question. It might actually be both. There's a sense that some parts of the administration could be leaning toward a quieter, more reserved role globally, whereas traditional allies count on a more committed presence. In essence, the US seems to be recalibrating its strategic priorities.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what's striking is the ripple effects this might have. Think about the implications on NATO or on, say, how Europe negotiates its own defense.
Precisely. It's almost like the US is saying, all right, I've done my part, now you guys figure out yours. And historically, that's been a tough ask for some European nations that have relied on the US umbrella for decades.
That makes me wonder, do you see any potential positives in this shift? Perhaps some opportunities for nations to develop deeper self-reliance?
Well, yes. On a theoretical level, it could catalyze innovation in regional security partnerships. Picture it like learning to ride a bike without training wheels. Risky, but potentially leading to stronger independent riding.
Yeah, true. But if things go south, there's also the risk of, say, errors in judgment from smaller powers not fully equipped for this autonomy.
Exactly. And that's where the critique comes in. While self reliance sounds great on paper, realistically, some allies might find themselves exposed to heightened regional tensions and conflicts.
I see. And interestingly, this idea also challenges the conventional wisdom. Aren't alliances supposed to be like mutual guarantees rather than unilateral dependencies?
Right, it kind of flips that notion on its head. If the US is backing away, then alliances become less of a mutual pact and more of an arrangement where partners have to fend for
Yeah,
themselves.
indeed. It almost seems like a testing ground for, well, a new kind of international order, one where the old guarantees are being redefined.
And that redefinition could, in time, alter the dynamics of global power. For instance, as you mentioned earlier, Europe might step up to manage its security, but that isn't guaranteed to be a smooth transition.
Definitely. Right? And then there's also the fallout from specific conflicts like the Qatar incident. I mean, if allies feel unsafe because of similar actions, it could trigger a cascade of reevaluations across other regions too.
Exactly. And when you think about it, these are not isolated incidents. They're, part of a bigger puzzle of shifting alliances and emerging challenges.
That's a good point. And this puzzle isn't just about military might, right? It brings in economic and political dimensions as well. For instance, if the US is retrenching, it could lead to more economically focused alliances among nations that are now more concerned about, security investments.
Absolutely. And that leads directly to the whole question, what does this mean for global leadership? One way to view it is that America's recalibration might encourage, say, a more multipolar world where influence is shared among several centers of power.
Interesting. But then, isn't there a risk that without a dominant stabilizing force, global policy could become, well, fragmented and less cohesive?
Yeah, and I think that's precisely the caveat. We could end up with a situation where regional conflicts erupt more frequently because there isn't that, overarching deterrent or mediator in place.
So I guess the challenge is balancing the benefits of a retrenched, less interventionist policy with the risks of leaving allies and even adversaries to manage their own security.
Exactly, and it's this balance or imbalance that really defines the stakes. It's like standing on a tightrope between necessary change and, well, potential chaos.
Yeah, indeed. I can't help but wonder then, how should our policymakers recalibrate their approach to managing these alliances moving forward? Aren't we looking at a near inevitable realignment on the horizon?
Absolutely. It's almost as if the current state of affairs demands a rethinking of traditional commitments. Perhaps a more flexible, partnership based model might be the way to go, where responsibilities and benefits are, more evenly distributed.
That makes sense. And in doing so, they'd need to address the concerns of allies who are left feeling insecure or undervalued, right? It's crucial to ensure that any shift is communicated clearly so there's no room for misinterpretation or unintended escalations.
Exactly, and transparency here is key. A clear roadmap could help mitigate the fears of abandonment, but it requires a lot of trust building. If the message is mixed or worse, if it seems like a retreat without a plan, then the fallout could be quite significant.
Absolutely. It does feel like a pivotal moment in international relations. Whether it leads to a more resilient network of regional partnerships or to a period of instability remains to be seen.
Right, and the debate around these issues, especially with voices like Colonel Wilkerson's, really highlights the uneasy transition we might be heading into. The stakes are high, and the decisions made now could reshape global power structures for
That's the
years
crux
to
of
come.
it. Well, it looks like we have plenty to mull over. It's a complex interplay of military strategy, political will, and the economics of power. I'm curious to see how this will evolve.
Me too, and it definitely gives us, a framework to think about the future of alliances beyond just traditional commitments. Plus, it challenges us to consider a new world order where multiple power centers must coexist.
Absolutely. Thanks for this deep dive. It's been a really engaging conversation about some of the most pressing geopolitical shifts on the horizon.
For sure, it's been a great discussion. It's always fascinating to unpack these complex issues and see how history and current events intersect.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay tuned to the evolving global scene.
Absolutely. Catch you later.